Hi everyone, so this week I am talking through 8 things you should know about period weight gain. So I think this is a topic that, quite rightly so, women worry about and want to just know a little bit more about. And for me that is a key, is to really understanding your body and understanding why certain symptoms are cropping up, and then we can have a much better chance at trying to treat them. If need be, of course, because hormones do naturally create some symptoms, especially in the lead up to your period as hormone levels start to drop off quite dramatically. So some symptoms are actually normal and kind of to some degree can be expected, but obviously it's when symptoms become more problematic, more acute, for example, that then we might want to make some changes and try to manage them that little bit better. So 8 things you should know. The first one I want to talk a bit about is bloating. So we think about weight gain and that seems very final, as if we're going to gain weight and never lose it again. Whereas a lot of the fluctuations in our weight as a result of hormones can be quite short-lived. And one of these situations is with bloating. So we can actually also get different types of bloating. So you can get digestive bloating and also you can get water retention, both of which can be caused by hormones, unfortunately, and this is why they can crop up around the time of our period. So in the lead up to our period, in the few days before our period, our hormones are at a particular balance. So our estrogen levels are falling quite rapidly, and progesterone is more dominant during this time, although progesterone levels are also dropping off. So as estrogen levels start to drop, that can actually slow our digestion, which we will go on to talk about as well further on, but also it can potentially give rise to water retention. So both of those functions can potentially give rise to this bloating. Then as our period starts, your estrogen levels start to rise, and potentially this ratio in hormones could also give rise to some bloating as well. Also, just from a more practical point of view, when you're on your period, your uterus is quite full, all that lining has to be shed, and that can just contribute to feeling a bit bloated as well. Plus, in terms of the bloating, we have cravings and other different things which we'll also come on to. So yes, I think I'll just move on to that now, my second point, which is cravings. So potentially what we eat could also contribute to weight gain or bloating, and this can potentially, the cravings can crop up as a result of change in hormones, but actually we suspect that could be exacerbated also by nutrient deficiencies. So we do potentially become more vulnerable to nutrient deficiencies as our hormones drop off to give us our period, and some key nutrients here would be magnesium, potassium and chromium, which can all help to protect against bloating. Also, it does depend on what we're eating at this time, depending on what we're craving, what we're feeling like, we're feeling a bit sorry for ourselves, and that's where carbs can come into it, and specifically your kind of quite white, processed, simple carbohydrates. And what happens is when we eat carbs in excess, they get stored into a form called glycogen, and water can actually bind to this glycogen, and that can make us feel a bit more bloated and struggle with that water retention. So it's those kind of sugary, refined carbs, and also salty foods as well. As we consume more salt, your body also wants more water in order to try and kind of neutralise the excess salt, so that can also be an issue in terms of your water retention. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about constipation, because this digestive issue can also make us feel quite bloated and potentially, contribute to that weight gain as well, although it may be short-lived, which we also will go on to discuss the timing and the length of these symptoms. But basically, as estrogen drops off to give us our period, it can slow our digestion, and that can make us feel quite bagged up and quite constipated. But many of us might find once our period starts, we are more regularly going to the toilet at that time, so that potentially could clear just after a few days' time. So my next point on my list is, how long does this symptom last? So people might be quite disheartened if they feel they're gaining weight or bloated at certain times of the month, but actually if we put it into perspective, quite often these side effects are quite short-lived, and actually our symptoms may fluctuate throughout the month. And again, this is all down to those balances of hormones. So it really is something just to try and understand your balance of hormones and when certain symptoms might crop up throughout the month. And as I say, if a symptom such as bloating crops up, you might notice that it does seem to appear at a certain time of the month, and then it does resolve itself as the weeks go on, so it's a little bit more manageable. Also, how much is normal? So it depends in terms of your weight gain or your bloating. This kind of goes hand in hand with how long is it lasting as well. If you see those fluctuations, then they're less likely to be very, very significant. But the thing with actual body fat is it does actually take quite a long time to build up body fat. So you would most likely notice a kind of creep up in your body weight over some time, rather than just for short spells at certain times of the month. And it's the same also with losing weight. If this was to be done, we'd obviously want this to be done quite gradually, with some sensible lifestyle changes rather than any drastic measures, and that means that the weight change is more likely to be sustainable. The other thing I would say is, just in terms of weight gain, is not to get too bogged down with numbers. It's very tricky and complicated, and it's lots to do with body composition as well, so don't get too bogged down with the numbers on the scales. Muscle, for example, weighs more than fat, for example, so if you're doing a bit more strength training or exercise, and you're thinking, why are the numbers on the scales not changing? It might be that you're creating a more favourable body composition, and that really is what we want, rather than just the numbers on the scales coming down. My next point is just to consider some self-help tips. So what you can do to help yourself if you do feel you struggle from bloating or water retention. So I mentioned some of the foods such as your sugar and refined carbs and your salt, but alcohol and caffeine are the other ones to potentially limit around this time of the month if you feel that you're quite bloated or experiencing water retention, particularly around your middle. And this is because these foods are quite stimulating, and basically they can ignite your stress response, and that can mean that we store more weight around our middle. And this is basically, it's kind of a protective mechanism because your liver basically converts your carbohydrate stores back into energy, and if we store them around our middle, they're very easily accessible for your liver. That's very close proximity. So it's just one to consider. Those kind of stimulant foods could potentially be adding to the issue. Instead, we want nutrient-rich foods. So that's all your foods rich in magnesium, which is very good for your insulin sensitivity and your blood sugar, and potassium, which is very supporting of your water retention and your kidney function. So that's where something like our balanced mineral drink would come in. It's got both your potassium and your magnesium in there together in combination, as well as some other nutrients such as your vitamin D and your zinc, which are all helpful at this time of the month especially. So the balance is just the 1 sachet daily, and of course we would say to keep up with your food sources of these lovely nutrients as well. So your magnesium is lovely nuts and seeds and fruits and vegetables, as well as some good quality dark chocolate, which might be a welcome surprise. That is good to include a little bit of this at this time of the month. And potassium is your bananas, your leafy greens, again lots of your vegetable options. So it's good if we can to keep up the food sources of these nutrients, as well as the balanced mineral drink being a good option. And we mentioned the carbohydrates, so Rather than just saying we can't eat carbs, it's trying to think about what are the good sources of carbs that you can include instead. So that's all your kind of complex carbohydrate, your brown carbs, again, all your fruit, vegetables and whole grains, and that can just help to have a higher fibre content and keep your gut and your digestion moving through to help protect against those digestive issues. Another self-care tip on my list is to exercise a little bit as well. As much as we might not feel like it, your exercise can help to release your feel-good endorphins to help support mood, and also it can help with your water retention, your water balance, but also it helps to keep your digestion moving through as well and help protect against constipation. Finally, is my tip on most occasions is to stay hydrated. Again, similar reasons for the exercise. It can really help against water retention. It can really help to keep your digestion moving through as well, to help limit that congestion down there in your gut. And also, if you feel like a warm herbal tea or something, personally I find that quite comforting, which can definitely be nice at that time of the month as well. So I hope those tips just help around the area of weight gain and bloating. And if you like our videos, please subscribe to the Go channel and also hit the bell icon so you'll be notified when I do any new videos.